The sun hung low over the endless plains of Montana, casting long shadows across the dusty corral where Elias Thorne stood, his weathered hands gripping the reins of his old mare. At 62, Elias had seen more hardships than most: droughts that cracked the earth, winters that claimed half his herd, and the slow erosion of a life built on stubborn independence. His ranch, the Double T, was all he had left after his wife passed 10 years ago and his son headed off to the city, never looking back. The land was his blood, his breath. That afternoon, a stranger rode up the dirt track leading to the main house. She was young, maybe 25, with sun-kissed skin and hair the color of ripe wheat tied back in a loose ponytail. Her horse was a sleek bay gelding, far finer than anything Elias owned these days. She dismounted gracefully, her boots kicking up small puffs of dust, and approached with a confident stride that made Elias narrow his eyes from the porch. "Mr. Thorne," she called out, her voice carrying clear across the yard. He nodded slowly, stepping down the creaky stairs. "That's me. What can I do for you, miss?" Her name was Clara Hayes, she said. She'd come from the bank in Billings with papers in hand. The ranch was in foreclosure. Elias had missed too many payments after the last bad season, and now the lenders were calling in the loan. She was there to inventory the property, assess the livestock, and prepare for auction. Elias felt the world tilt under his feet. He'd known it was coming, the letters piling up unread on his kitchen table, but hearing it spoken aloud by this polished young woman in her crisp blouse and jeans that looked brand new made it real. He argued at first, his voice rising like thunder, telling her about the generations of Thornes who'd worked this land, how it wasn't just dirt and cattle but family. Clara listened patiently, her green eyes steady. She wasn't unkind. In fact, there was a softness to her that surprised him. But business was business. She had a job to do. Over the next few days, Clara stayed on the ranch. The nearest town was hours away, and with the inventory taking time, Elias grudgingly offered her the guest room in the old bunkhouse. She accepted, helping out with chores to earn her keep, feeding the horses, mending fences, even cooking supper one night when Elias's arthritis flared up. They talked more than he expected. Clara shared stories of growing up in the city, her degree in finance, how she'd taken this job to pay off student loans. Elias opened up too, rare for him, about losing his wife to cancer, the loneliness that gnawed at him like coyotes on a carcass. There was something about her presence that chipped away at his walls. She laughed at his gruff jokes, listened without judgment, and one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, she reached over and squeezed his calloused hand. It was innocent at first. But the nights grew warmer, and the isolation of the ranch amplified every glance, every brush of shoulders in the narrow kitchen. Elias hadn't felt desired in years, not since his youth. Clara was vibrant, alive in a way that made his heart ache with forgotten longing. One stormy evening, after a day spent rounding up strays in the pouring rain, they stumbled back into the house soaked to the bone. Clara peeled off her wet jacket, laughing breathlessly as water dripped from her hair. Elias handed her a towel, his eyes lingering longer than they should. "You should get out of those clothes before you catch your death," he muttered, turning away to stoke the fire. She hesitated, then smiled softly. "You're right." In the flickering firelight, she unbuttoned her shirt slowly, deliberately, letting it fall to the floor. Her skin glowed warm against the flames, curves softened by the shadows. Elias froze in place, towel forgotten in his hand. He hadn't expected this, not from her, not here. Clara stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. She reached for the hem of his own soaked shirt, tugging it gently. "Your turn." His breath caught. Trembling fingers undid the buttons, and he shrugged it off, revealing the scarred, sun-leathered torso of a man who'd wrestled life itself. She traced a finger along an old rope burn on his chest, her touch electric. They moved to the bedroom without words, the storm raging outside mirroring the one building within. Clothes shed like old skins, her jeans, his belt, everything discarded in a trail from the living room. Bodies pressed together on the worn quilt that his wife had sewn decades ago, guilt flickering in Elias's mind but drowned out by the heat of the moment. Clara was bold, guiding his hands, whispering encouragements that made his blood roar. He lost himself in her, the years melting away as they explored each other with a hunger born of solitude. She arched beneath him, moans mixing with the thunder, and for those hours, the ranch, the foreclosure, the world outside ceased to exist. But dawn brought clarity, harsh and unforgiving. Elias woke first, staring at the ceiling as regret flooded in. What had he done? This woman was here to take his home, his legacy. And he'd let her in, literally and figuratively. Shame burned hotter than any passion. Clara stirred beside him, smiling sleepily as she propped herself on an elbow. Her hair tumbled wild over bare shoulders. Morning, she murmured, leaning in for a kiss. He pulled away abruptly, sitting up and swinging his legs over the bed's edge. This was a mistake. Her smile faltered. Elias. No. His voice was rough, edged with panic. You get dressed and finish your damn inventory. Then you leave. She sat up, pulling the sheet around her. It wasn't a mistake for me. Last night was real. He stood, grabbing his pants from the floor and yanking them on. Real. You're here to strip me of everything. How's that real? Clara's eyes flashed with hurt, then determination. She let the sheet drop, standing unashamed in the morning light filtering through the curtains. Her body was a reminder of the night, flawless and tempting. You already took it off, she said softly, stepping closer. Your walls, your pride, everything you hide behind. Now do it. Elias froze, halfway through buttoning his shirt. Her words hit like a branding iron. Do what? Give in completely. Let her have the ranch without a fight. Or something deeper, surrender to this feeling, this connection that terrified him more than losing the land. She closed the distance, her hand resting on his chest again, feeling his heart hammer. Do it, Elias. Let go. Sign the papers. Start over. With me, if you want. The papers. Of course. That's what this was about. Seduce the old fool, make him compliant. The thought twisted in his gut like a knife. You think that's what last night was? He growled, voice low and dangerous. A ploy to get me to roll over. Clara's face paled. No. God, no. I didn't plan this. It just happened. But maybe it's a sign. The ranch is killing you slowly anyway. Debts, isolation. You could be free. Free. The word echoed mockingly. Free of his history, his roots, his pain. Elias's hands clenched into fists. He stared at her, naked and vulnerable yet somehow in control, waiting for him to break. The unthinkable rose in him then, dark and unbidden. Not violence, he wasn't that man, but something colder, more calculated. He turned away, striding to the dresser where his revolver lay in its holster, a relic from better days for scaring off predators. Clara's eyes widened as he picked it up, checking the cylinder with practiced ease. Elias, what are you? Get dressed, he said flatly, not looking at her. She scrambled for her clothes, fear creeping into her voice. You're scaring me. Good. He holstered the gun and faced her. You want me to do the unthinkable? Fine. In one swift motion, he grabbed the foreclosure papers from the table where she'd left them the night before, stacked neatly, waiting for his signature. He tore them in half, then quarters, letting the pieces flutter to the floor like confetti. That's not enough, he muttered to himself. Clara watched, clothed now but trembling. Elias, please. We can talk about this. No more talking. He stormed out of the bedroom, her following close behind. In the kitchen, he rifled through drawers until he found the old lighter fluid for the grill and a box of matches. Clara protested as he gathered the shredded papers and headed outside. The burned barrel stood by the shed, rusted but serviceable. He dumped the pieces in, doused them liberally, and struck a match. Flames leapt up greedily, consuming the legal chains that bound him. Clara stood beside him, the heat warming their faces. That won't stop it, she whispered. They'll just send more. Maybe, he said, watching the fire. But it'll buy time. She touched his arm tentatively. What now? He turned to her, the fire reflecting in his eyes, wild, resolved. The unthinkable wasn't surrender. It was defiance. Now, he said, we fight. But fighting meant more than burned papers. Elias knew the bank wouldn't stop. Calls would come, then sheriffs, then auctioneers. That night, as Clara slept uneasily in the guest bunkhouse, he'd insisted on separate rooms. He sat at the kitchen table with a yellowed map of the ranch spread before him. Sections marked in faded ink showed mineral rights, water sources, boundaries disputed long ago. An old rumor surfaced in his mind, whispered by his father decades back. Gold. Not much, but traces panned from the creek during the 1800s rush. Prospectors had come and gone, finding fool's gold mostly, but the family lore said there was a vein on the North 40, hidden under rocky outcrop. Unthinkable to dig it up himself, he dismissed it as fantasy. But desperation breeds belief. The next morning, he hitched the trailer to his truck and drove Clara to town under pretense of supplies. He dropped her at the bus station with a curt goodbye, ignoring her pleas to stay and work it out. Go back to your bank, he told her. Tell them the old man's gone crazy. She left with tears in her eyes, but he didn't watch the bus pull away. Back at the ranch, Elias gathered tools, pickaxe, shovel, sledgehammer, from the barn. He loaded them into the ATV and headed to the North 40, where jagged rocks overlooked a dry gulch. Days blurred into sweat and blisters. He hacked at stone, following faint quartz lines his grandfather had marked with cryptic X's on the map. Dust choked him, the sun baked his skin, but he pressed on, fueled by rage and a sliver of hope. On the seventh day, the pick struck something that rang different, not rock, but metal echo. He chipped carefully, heart pounding. There it was, a narrow seam glittering with yellow flecks embedded in quartz. Not a mother lode, but real. Enough, perhaps, to assay and stake a claim, to pay off debts or at least negotiate. He sat back on his heels, laughing, a cracked, maniacal sound that scared even the crows from the trees. But the unthinkable deepened. Word spreads in rural country. A prospector in town overheard Elias buying assay kits. Rumors flew. By week's end, vehicles appeared on the horizon, jeeps with out-of-state plates, men in hard hats scouting. The bank accelerated. A new representative arrived, this one a burly man named Harlan with 2 deputies in tow, eviction notice in hand. Elias met them at the gate, shotgun across his arm, not loaded, but threatening enough. You got 30 days, Harlan sneered. Then we take it all. Over my dead body, Elias replied. Harlan laughed. That can be arranged, old-timer. They left, but Elias knew time was short. Clara returned unexpectedly 2 weeks later, driving a rental car up the track. She'd quit the bank, she said, unable to stomach what they'd do to him. I believe in you, she told him on the porch. In us. He wanted to send her away again, but couldn't. The nights resumed, fiercer now, born of shared desperation. Together, they worked the claim in secret, bagging samples, sending them to a discreet assayer in Boise. Results came back promising, high-grade ore, viable for small-scale mining. But the bank struck first. Auction scheduled, surveyors mapping for sale. The night before the auction, Elias made his decision, the truly unthinkable. He waited until moonset, then drove the back roads to Harlan's motel in town. With a crowbar from the truck, he smashed the windows of Harlan's company SUV, slashed tires on the deputy's cruiser. Petty, but it delayed them. Not enough. Back home, Clara waited anxiously. What did you do? What I had to. Sirens wailed in the distance by dawn. Arson reported at the bank's local branch. Anonymous tip led police to find foreclosure files suspiciously singed, records lost, in a small fire. Elias hadn't done it. Too risky, but he suspected allies, old ranchers who'd faced similar fates, banding quietly. Chaos ensued. Delays piled up. In the reprieve, the mining claim was filed officially. Investors nibbled, small ones, ethical ones Clara connected through her old network. The ranch transformed slowly. A crew arrived to extract carefully, preserving the land as much as possible. Gold paid debts, then some. Elias stood on the hill overlooking the operation one evening, Clara at his side, her hand in his. You did the unthinkable, she said softly. He squeezed her fingers. We both did. The machines hummed below, pulling wealth from earth his ancestors had guarded unknowingly. The double T endured, changed but alive. Yet deeper changes stirred in Elias. The man who'd frozen at her words had thawed into something fierce, protective not just of land but of this new life budding beside him. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder as the sun dipped, painting the sky in fire. And in the quiet, with the weight of the past lifting grain by grain,